we were sitting on the other side of the pier with our feet, over toward the river, fishing in the river. And the fish still wasn't biting, so I told Calvin, I said, well, we might as well go home. But I guess that was when I heard it. It was some kind of zipping sound. And when I turned around, in this area out here, about 40 or 50 feet out there, there was some kind of crab, it looked like it's going to come right onto the ground. But it came on down and hovered about a foot and a half or 2 feet off of the ground. We didn't know what to do, the river behind us and that out there not knowing what it was. So, and then before we had time to really do anything, it seemed like an opening appeared. Toward the end, it was, toward us. And the blue light, it had blue flashing lights as it was, approaching the ground, but then they went out. And when the opening appeared, some source of light came from the inside. It was just almost blinding. Of course, we could see them in the opening coming from, when it started out to craft. But
did you think it was people coming out at first?
Well, they had. I kind of thought it was people at first, off like that. But of course, when they appeared there in front of me, it was the most shock I've ever had in my life.
What did you see?
Well, they were shorter than me. I'd say about 5'2" or 3", and they didn't have a neck. Their head, it seemed to come directly to their shoulders, and they had something. It came out to a point about where a nose would be, and on each side the ears. And I believe that they looked like they were a little longer on the ears than the nose.
But still pointed the ears.
They were still pointing, yes. But it seemed to me when they came out that doorway or that opening or whatever it was, then just almost instantly they were right there on us. And their arms, they had arms. And I saw the arms moving here and in the shoulders, but they had webbed. I mean, their fingers were webbed, and then they had something like a thumb, and they were like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They had me one on this arm like this, and on the other one, they had my other arm like that. And I just seemed to lift up to the same height they were off the ground, and we just moved into the craft.
Now inside, how did they lay you out? Do you remember how it happened?
Yes. I didn't see any tables or chairs or anything in there. I'm not saying it wasn't in there because the light was almost blinding, but I didn't see any. And when they carried me inside, they seemed to just lean me back, And this eye, well, I keep referring to it as an eye, and it moved up to in front of me about this close, and it started right at my eyes, looking me right in the eye. And it hesitated there for a few seconds, and it just started moving over my entire body. When they brought me from the craft along this area here, and they didn't drop me, they just released me back to the ground. And I fell. I don't know why my legs were weak. I don't know why it was the fright or what it was, but I fell onto the ground. And that's when I seen Calvin. He's standing right over here in this area, and he was standing facing the river with his arms outstretched like that, just like he was staring at something. I think there has to be a reason why that Calvin and me was picked.
Maybe because you could take it.
Well, it might be. I don't know. I think that they know more of what's going on down here on this earth than we think. And I don't know. They might have been, you might say, looking for somebody that could, you might say, hold up under the strain and convince people that there is another world and there's some kind of life on that world. Tonight, I believe it was October the 11th. Myself and a friend of mine were fishing on the Pascagoula River by the old Saltpeter shipyard on the west side of the river. And I don't know, it just seemed to be all of a sudden that one of us looked around and heard something like a zip noise. And it just appeared that it was some type of spacecraft, and we saw a blue flashing light. And almost immediately, they seemed like the end of the craft opened up some way, and three things came out of it. I don't know. I mean, I still can't say whether it was beings or robots or what it was, but and they approached us almost immediately, and two of them took hold of my arms, and I seemed to just raise up to the level that they were, which they were about a foot or a foot and a half off of the ground, and they carried me inside of the spacecraft.
This is Charles Hickson, a Mississippi shipyard worker who claims to have encountered an unidentified flying object, a UFO, in 1973. Two eminent scientists later placed them under hypnosis and concluded that he was telling the truth.
Yes, they gave me, I guess, some type of examination. I don't know what it was, but it seemed to be maybe some kind of an eye or something that it kept floating back and forth over my body, which it didn't ever touch my body. And then I seemed to be floating on the inside. I didn't touch anything in there that I know of. And then later on, they carried me back outside and released me. And it seemed like it was almost immediately again. I heard the little noise, the zipping noise, and the blue light was still flashing, and the craft was just almost immediately gone.
Did you struggle with them when they came out of the spacecraft?
No, I seemed to be unable to struggle. When they took hold of me, I seemed to have lost all feelings, and I don't remember struggling any at all with them.
Did they communicate to you anyway, or to each other?
No, they didn't try or communicate with me. I did hear, one of them made some kind of a buzzing like noise, but the other two, I didn't hear any noise from them whatsoever.
What did they look like?
Well, they were about 5 foot tall, I guess, and they had some features of a human being, but they had more or less like pinchers or claws for hands. And I didn't see any toes on their feet. They seemed to be the feet seemed almost round. And the body, if it was a body, it didn't have any clothes on. It seemed to be, whatever it was, it seemed to be skin tight and wrinkly looking.
What did the spacecraft look like?
Inside the spacecraft, about all that I could tell, it was a bright glowing light. I don't know what source the light came from. I didn't see any light fixtures or bulbs or anything like that.
There was a cut on your arm that you noticed a couple of days after this incident that suddenly healed. Do you have any explanation for that?
No, sir, I don't. I don't have any explanation for it. It's gone away now, and it's no scar or anything left.
The abduction by a UFO of two shipyard workers, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, in October 1973 caused a sensation in the United States. The men were out fishing when behind them landed a cigar-shaped, silver-colored UFO, about 30 meters in length and emitting bright blue light.
On October the 11th, 1973, Calvin Parker, a friend of mine, and myself went fishing on the Pascagoula River in Pascagoula, Mississippi. It was probably a little after the sun went down in the evening, and we were fishing from a pier out into the river, and I heard some sound behind me, a hissing-like sound, and I turned and looked, and there was some kind of craft was hovering about 18 inches or 2 foot above the ground, and Calvin had turned by this time. He was looking at the same object. There was blue lights up on the end that was toward us, which I'm assuming was the front, and a door, a sliding door, I assume, appeared there, and there was a brilliant light that came outside of the door, and three things, I found out later, were robots. They came into this beam of light and came outside, and two of them took hold of me, and one took hold of Calvin, and when they took hold of me, I felt pain in my left arm, and I seemed to rise above the ground to the height that they were into the light beam, and they carried me aboard the craft, and inside the room that we were in was probably round, It was glowing from the walls and the ceiling and the walls and the floor. And these things released me, and I could move my eyes, the only thing I could move. And in front of me, something came out from the wall. It appeared to be a big eye. It moved up to in front of me in my face, and it lingered there a while, and then it moved downward. And I'm assuming it went under me and came back over the top of my head and back in front of me again. And this thing remained there a few minutes, and then it went back into the wall. And by that time, these things had come back and took hold of me, and we turned and was in the beam of light and went back outside the crab, and they released me, and I fell to the ground. It was this time I saw Calvin, and he was standing there with his arms outstretched. Appeared to be going in shock, and I made myself toward him, and before I reached him, I heard the hissing sound again, and I looked behind me and saw those blue lights, and this crab was just instantly gone. And I made my way on to Calvin, and I brought him back from going into shock, and where I could talk to him, and I tried to assure him that they hadn't done any harm to us physically. I didn't know what they had done to him mentally. These things were robots. They were about 5'6" tall. They was gray in color. It appeared to me it looked like elephant skin. It was very wrinkled, and their arms were they were real long in proportion to their body. Their legs remained together. They didn't have feet. It seemed to be something round where the stumps where the feet should have been. And I knew, or I know now, that these things were robots. They didn't have any indication of breathing. They didn't have any eyes. Then I found out later under deep hypnosis that there's a window to the left of that area where the eye came from in the wall, and they were living beings in that, looking through that window at me. I don't think they could come out into this atmosphere, and they had the rowboats out there to examine me. We didn't know what to do after the craft left, and in talking, we decided that we'd call Keesler Air Force Base, which is only about 25 or 30 miles from there. We called Keesler, and I called Keesler, and they told me that they didn't handle those things, that we'd have to go through our sheriff's department. So then we hesitated there. We didn't want to be called nuts and so on, but I finally decided that we needed to tell someone. I thought it might be a threat to our country.
According to FBI files, Hickson and Parker were interrogated for hours in the Jackson Sheriff's Office the following day. What made the interrogation special was the presence of 12 federal security experts, including 3 colonels, 2 lieutenant colonels, a major, and a captain, led by Colonel Amdahl, a senior medical officer. Professor James Harder's use of hypnosis and a lie detector test showed that the men were telling the truth. In the case of Hickson, the incident did not remain his only UFO contact. They have continued to this day.
Since 1973, I've been contacted many times from these beings. They've told me of world events that will happen. In fact, they told me that for a reason that communism would fall, and I told the news people about this before it did fall, and they didn't believe me. They laughed at me. We know now that communism in Russia has failed, and it's going to soon be a thing of the past. These people have told me of a major event that's going to happen in the world that's going to affect everyone. But I'm not prepared and can't talk about it at this time.
But later on in that year, or the early part of the next year, in January, I'm really an outdoorsman. When I'm not working, I do a lot of fishing and a lot of hunting. And there happened to be a tree farm there close by my home that to about 750 acres that I spent a lot of time on in hunting and fishing. There's a fine stream with a pond there. But I had gone back in there fishing, hunting in January, and I was sitting down under a hickory nut tree, squirrel hunting, and this same craft that Calvin and myself had seen in Pascagoula came down in an area close by me. And up until then, I was very frightened. I was afraid to go out at night by myself. I didn't know what was going to happen. But they just seemed, I was sitting down under the tree, it just seemed a voice came to me that to not be afraid, that they didn't mean me any harm, that they would be another place at another time. And it frightened me all of a sudden, but then I immediately got up and went straight home. My wife was alarmed that I didn't continue my hunting, so I told her what happened. But all the fear was gone, that these things didn't mean us any harm, that I thought in the future I would get to meet them. And in the May of that same year, in Mother's Day, we had gone up to my father's farm up in further up in Mississippi to spend a day with my mother. And we were coming home late at night, my wife and myself and three of our children, and we had a terrible experience. They thought it was terrible. We were coming in a area that was not very populated, a wooded area off the main highway coming home, and there was a light that kept following us. And later on, it came around in front of the car and was coming down in the road to land. And when my wife saw it, she just became hysterical. And my youngest daughter at that time, she was a baby. In fact, she graduated high school this year. She came along late in life. But anyway, she was quite young, and she was asleep, and it alarmed her, and she had awakened and was screaming. My wife was screaming. But this craft moved back up into the sky, and it moved around to our right, and moved out into a field, and came down and lit the entire area up, and had a row of lights all the way around the craft. Well, we had stopped the car by that time, and I was trying to get out of the car. I knew it was my time to meet them. And before I could get out of the car, my wife was screaming, and my youngest son, and she held me and wouldn't let me out of the car. So then the voice came to me again, this is not the time. It'll be another time. And we left. My wife became so hysterical that we left, and I could see, looking back, that the craft was still there, hovering when we left. It was a lot larger craft than what Calvin and myself had seen. But anyway, they someone wanted me to call the Key to the Air Force Base. Well, I said, there's no use. There's no use of notifying anyone. There's nothing anyone can do. It's something I have to handle myself. So we didn't tell anyone about this over a period of years. And a lot of things that I can't talk about is kind of personal, that we've had other encounters since then. It's come to a point now that the tree farm that I had mentioned, there's very few people that goes into that area. And when I've been there many times, I go there many times now, and that's where these things contact me. I have a feeling that I have to go there. When I go there alone, I go there for that purpose. And they have painted a beautiful picture to me that what a world could be without pollution. That we were on the verge of destroying ourselves on nuclear hydrogen energy. And if we didn't stop this, if this wasn't stopped or something wasn't done about our environment, that we would be destroyed again. But I think now that it seems that there is being something done. We notice the threat of nuclear or hydrogen energy is beginning to fade a little bit. Communism is going away. People are taking more interest in our environment and the pollution that we're putting in the air. Excuse me, I'm just a little bit hoarse. But I think we are going to see a world change that we're going to find answers to our pollution of our environment. I think the threat of nuclear and hydrogen energy will go away. These things have told me that this is something that's way out. I mean, it's hard for me to stand before you and tell you this. But it's something I've kept to myself for a long time. But there's an energy out there that we haven't discovered yet. It's an energy that, for instance, the movement of the planets in our universe, in our solar system, there's an energy that moves these planets. And I think they've learned how to tap this energy. It's something that's there, it's free. And I think in the days to come, in the very near future, that we're going to tap into some energy that's going to make everything else obsolete. I think we're going to see a much better and a more beautiful world to live in. And also, I'd like to say, while I'm talking with you, that being reared a hardshell Baptist in South Central Mississippi, we simply lived in our own little world. I didn't believe or even think about these things until this happened to me in Pascagoula, Mississippi. I certainly didn't believe in reincarnation, but I believe in reincarnation now. I think I've lived before and I'll live again. I think this world it's been destroyed several times. Our civilizations has been destroyed. It was on the verge of being destroyed again. But I think we're going to make it now, from what I can, on the indications that I have. But it's something that has really, I'm not a religious fanatic. I never have been. But I certainly believe in God, and I think that God, in all of his greatness, didn't only create this little world here. He created all those worlds out there in this universe and the ones beyond. There's no end to it. It's a revolving thing. And I also believe that we were planted here, that something that's greater than we are, that come under the jurisdiction of God, has us here as an experiment. We're indirectly from God. And I believe that maybe the experiment might work this time, hopefully. So I'd like to leave you with that, but I'm open to any questions that anyone might ask. But I would like to say this, that it's made me a lot better man than I was back before 1973 to know that there are life out there, and there's a good possibility that life is going to help us grow into something that will never be an end.